I'm a guy that's 24. Each day I build some more. I like the sequels. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back again with another video, and this is going to be the LEGO Star Wars MOC Showcase episode 26. This is the series I've created to highlight some of the best MOCs that I've come across on the internet. If you find any of the MOCs in this video impressive, all I ask is that you go to the links in the description and support the builders by giving them a like, comment, or even a follow. We're going to go big for the first MOC today. We're going to be looking at a UCS AT-OT build by Mr. Idler on Flickr. From the description, it looks like there are 2,642 pieces on this monstrosity, and it is just a wonderful build. For one, the AT-OT is a vehicle we don't see too much of in Star Wars, but walkers in Star Wars are synonymous, and this one is definitely one of the cooler looking walkers in my opinion. It's basically a big troop transport, and the original set that LEGO did for this thing definitely did justice to it, and this does even more justice to it. Looking at it, the first thing I notice is the window / cockpit design. I think it looks incredible. I really do love those quarter circle tiles, the 4x4 ones that are kind of surrounding the window, and using them there, I think it's just a genius idea. It looks so smooth and sleek, and it looks accurate as well, and you can even see the clone trooper inside of there. Also, I think that the leg / feet designs are also really nice, using more quarter circle tiles, except it's the smaller version of it, the 2x2s, but just a good usage of some relatively new LEGO pieces in there, so I give him a lot of credit for that. I also appreciate that you can get a little glimpse of the neck area, and we see this neck design pretty often in Star Wars, like where there's kind of like discs that connect the main cockpit area to the actual body of the vehicle. Like it's very prominent in the AT-AT walker, and really any walker they do that has a quote-unquote head area. So I think it's just kind of cool that he incorporated that disc looking aesthetic to the neck area there. If we move on to the next photo, we get a better look at the top troop compartment of the vehicle, and this is probably my favorite part of the MOC, just because, I mean, there's so many seats, there's just so much space for figures. Like, I would just love to see this thing filled to the brim with minifigs, and you can also see towards the back of the design, there's the giant ramp that would actually allow the troops to get from the troop compartment down to the ground, and there's also just, I feel like, good angles on this vehicle. Like, I love kind of surrounding the top edges of the vehicle. It's like slanted before it kind of goes down to where the legs are, and it just all looks so smooth and flows really well together. So he says he's gonna eventually put out the instructions for this thing, and this is something I could absolutely see myself getting the instructions for. I don't currently have, you know, a Republic dropship, and it doesn't look like this thing is really made to accommodate a dropship, but that would definitely be something I would be looking into, because I really love the way this vehicle looks, and I think that combining it with a dropship as well would just mean even that more to this vehicle. But even without the dropship, I feel this AT-OT stands on its own pretty well. Like if you wanted to do, for example, a Felucia MOC or whatever, this would be a perfect addition to it. Mr. Idler is a builder I have featured many times in this series, and I feel I'm going to continue to do so because he puts together some pretty incredible builds, and this one is certainly no exception to it. So wonderful job on this walker, man. The next MOC is titled Yavin 4 Rebel Workshop by Trach, and this is basically a corner of the Yavin hangar that we've seen and really fell in love with. Yavin's just such a cool location in general. One of the first things that popped out to me about this MOC is the walls. I feel that the usage of the masonry bricks as texture, as well as the cheese slopes in there as well, just combined really well to make some pretty good looking texture. And you can see he even uses the cheese slope technique on the tan parts of the walls. I also appreciate the fact that the dark tan parts of the walls are slanted. I don't know, it just adds a lot to this MOC, and I mean, this MOC is, you know, relatively small in size, but those slanted walls really go a long way. I feel that one of the keys to making MOCs, especially when you're doing something on a smaller scale like this, is really just trying to do things that are kind of unconventional and that would capture someone's eye, especially someone who kind of understands LEGO and understands you know, what it might take to accomplish certain techniques. Like, I mean, obviously the slanted wall thing isn't like a super complicated technique, but it just, I don't know, it's more dynamic than we would get just with, you know, standard stud to stud connections. Lego can be very grid-like, so whenever we can kind of stray away from that and get some unconventional angles, I feel that does a really good job at just drawing your eye to the MOC. There's also some nice light gray greebling on the wall sections, kind of between the dark tan sections. One of the things I really like about this MOC is the like vines. Well, they're not really actually vine pieces. It's the brown whip piece that is meant to simulate vines, and they're going throughout the leaves on the walls on Yavin. It is just very, just clearly aesthetically Yavin, and it's aesthetically pleasing as well. I like that technique quite a bit. There's also some really good pieces of machinery kind of hanging around. Like you can even see there's what I would imagine is like an engine hanging from like a small little crane build. And then of course the Rebel card is always a cool addition to any hangar MOC like this. It is instantly recognizable, and it's just a cool looking vehicle design, I think. The last thing I'll mention is I like the diversity of the minifigs. Like a few of these are minifigs that you'd find like, you know, just straight out of the box, and I really think it's just those two Rebel fleet troopers over to the left side, but everything else, it looks like there's been some thought put into the figures and a concerted effort to make them look different and unique and diverse, and I always appreciate that. Just adds a lot more liveliness to the MOC. Actually, scratch that. The actual last thing I wanted to talk about is the ground design. It's made using a snot technique, and I always just love seeing people do this, especially when they can get shares like squares and rectangles and actually get the lines to like line up perfectly. He was able to do this here, and it just looks awesome to me. This next MOC is by Tesone. It is simply titled "Get to Your Ships." So I like this MOC a lot, and like I always try to make an effort to show off different unique wall designs, and this is definitely going to be one of those MOCs that called for it. But before I get into the wall, I did want to talk about the border of this MOC, because I think there's some really cool techniques used here. I think that those half arch pieces at the edges of the MOC, at the very bottom where it's black, and then like one level above it where it's supposed to be like the street level or like the floor level part of the MOC, that looks really nice. It just looks so smooth and sleek, and it's something that I feel you don't see too often. Like usually when people do the black border, or really any border or edge of a MOC, it's a sharp edge, but this looks really cool. I like how it's so smooth going across there, so that's something I'd be at least contemplating doing for a MOC if I do something at this scale. But the wall, of course, we have to talk about, because there's some pretty cool techniques in here. I love that it's slanted, for one. Like I mentioned with the previous MOC, like that just really goes a long way in making a MOC look dynamic. Secondly, I love the actual door. It's I guess a relatively simple door design, but I feel like it's effective. The fact that the top of the door is arched, and then you kind of have those two 45-degree slopes somewhat wrapping around it, just goes a really long way, I think. And there's some good usage of pieces on the wall as well. He's using those like 3 turntable, like the top part of it, but they're actually reversed, right? Like you're seeing the bottom of it sticking out. Then there's also the bottom of those hinge. And you can also see he uses the bottom of the top half of the hinge bricks. There's just some really cool usages of parts there, I feel. And then of course to the left and the right sides of the wall, you have the famous Death Star wall light pattern, which I think can go a long way in making any MOC just feel even more like a Star Wars MOC. Also similar to the last MOC, there's some really cool line techniques in the ground. All in all, I just feel like there are a lot of elements in this MOC that you can learn from and implement into your future MOCs. Next up, we're going to look at this week's photography based photo, and it is by Jannin, and it is simply Luke, Han, and Leia. Well, a recreation of that pretty famous photo of these 3 characters all together in Lego, and this photo just makes me smile. Like there's not really too much to dive into in terms of parts usages or techniques, but it's just a really nice looking photo, and I believe it was made to commemorate the 40th year of Star Wars, and I don't know, this thing is just so nice. Like it makes me so happy. I really do feel like this is wallpaper worthy, especially with the cool custom logo to the bottom right hand corner. I also really do just appreciate the usage of the most recent versions of all of these figures. Like Lego has come such a long way with the detail in these minifigures, and it's just so nice to see the 3 most important characters of Star Wars all together in a nice looking photo recreated in Lego. Like this is almost the epitome of Lego Star Wars for me. Now the final mock we're going to take a look at today is, as you could tell by the title, I'm sure, an update on the mock we talked about last week. Last week I showed you guys what is one of the most ridiculous mocks I've ever seen, a 71,000 plus piece 13-foot long Super Star Destroyer build, and at the time I was under the impression that the builder had never built it in physical bricks, that it was simply just only in renders, and he had actually been selling the instructions to the build to accumulate funds to actually build it in real bricks. I want to give a shout out to Stubbaka in the chat for notifying me that the builder did actually start constructing this thing in real bricks, and here's one of the photos of it. You can see that, for one, this thing is massive. Like, it is the length of two large probably 6.5 foot folding tables, and like, this thing is just ridiculous. Just even here where you can only see the bottom like half of it, and then it's only like a portion of that. It looks like he also made a metal structure to support the frame of the build, which for something of this size, I can totally understand. Like, trying to maintain this many bricks, like, you need so many stands on this thing, and even that probably would still be an issue just from the sheer weight of a model like this. You can also see on the right hand side of the video that he enjoys him a little iDubbbz while he's building. If we move on to the next photo, we get a better look at the bottom of the build, and once again, it just looks totally massive. Like, it's spanning multiple tables. Like, I know I do a lot of work at, you know, making big builds that ends up going across multiple tables, but the thought of building a vehicle that spans this large of a space is just insane to me, and just the details in this thing are incredible. Like, it is just so many great pieces, and I mean, I'm someone who builds primarily Star Wars, who deals primarily with a lot of great parts, but even this just looks like so much to me. Like, just look at all the tiles and like the small jumper pieces and the bricks that are kind of built with snot for the bottom hull of this thing. Like, this thing is quite the feat. I can't even imagine what it would have taken to not only design it, but to actually start working on this in real bricks. Like, there's just so many jumpers you'd have to attach alone. The next photo I feel does the best job at just conveying the size of this thing, and like I said, this is just the bottom of it. Like, he has to, I guess, work on it upside down, you know, trying to get all the details into the bottom, and even just the bottom of this build looks totally ridiculous. If we move on to the next photo, we get a bit of a closer look of the back bottom section of the build, and this, I feel, really just shows you how much detail is in this build. There's just so many jumpers, so many small gray pieces, so many tiles. Like, it honestly just makes me anxious looking at it. The thought of having to put this many pieces on this section of a build to convey all that detail is just insane to me, but it looks really good. Like, the renders really didn't do this thing justice. Like, when you see this in real bricks, I feel it just really nails home how much detail and how much time and attention he put into making this build look as accurate as possible. One of the things I did notice is it looks like he opted to go for a more custom implementation of those engine pieces. I think one of the things I mentioned when I first talked about this mock was like he was using big gray tires for these engines, which aren't actual pieces, and I like the solution he came up with. Honestly, just by looking at it, really can't tell how he did it, but it looks good. It looks relatively seamless, and I like the implementation. The next photo gives a better look at the back of the bottom of this mock once again, and like, I mean, same thing that I said before applies here. There's just so many little greebling pieces on this thing. Like, it is just totally ridiculous, and the fact that the bottom hole is just littered with all those 1x1 tiles. Like, I mean, if you were just building, you know, the bottom of it with bricks and just kind of stacking them and building them out, that would be a bit of a monotonous process, but it would still go much faster than having to deliberately place all the 1x1 bricks with a stud on the side and create this pattern of just 1x1 tiles that is on the bottom of this thing. So I'm just thoroughly impressed with this mock. One of the other just totally cool features about this thing is he actually incorporated LEDs. So in a few of the previous pictures, you could see there was like a power adapter kind of coming from the inside of the mock, and that was to actually accommodate the LEDs in this thing. So you can see he really went all out on this build and really just making it as detailed as possible. Now here comes the bad news. The sad part is that this is pretty much where the build stopped. He had pictures on his Flickr going all the way up until April of 2017, and then the progress just stopped. Like, there are no pictures of this build since then. which is really disappointing to me. The video that I uploaded that primarily featured just the render of this MOC did really well. Like, clearly there was a lot of interest in this build, and I really did feel like I had to do this MOC justice by updating you guys on it this week and showing you that it wasn't just some LDD or online render project somebody was working on, but that they actually had true intentions on building this thing in real bricks. And for everything I've shown you, like, he did a pretty good job on it. He made it actually pretty far through the MOC, dare I say almost halfway through the MOC. Like, the bottom of this thing looks pretty complete to me. It is, though, very sad to see that, like, that's really where the progress stopped. I'm going to be shooting him a message just to see if he has any plans at any time down the line to work on it. Stabaka, who is the one who showed me this initially, said that he thinks he ran out of money, which for a project like this, totally understandable. This is one of those projects, like, I don't know, man, like, you would have to just find out a way to figure this thing out. Like, I don't know, of course, what's going on in his life. If there are extenuating circumstances, I can totally understand why something like this would have to be put on hold. But I mean, this is one of those things, like, I could totally see him doing some sort of Kickstarter or crowdfunding just to finish this project, because this has to be one of the most incredible single-person, single-funded projects I've ever seen with LEGO, and I would just die if I finally saw this thing get completed. I'm not sure how much attention he wants from this thing, so I'm not going to try to, like, launch an initiative and get a whole bunch of people to go tell him to finish it, but I will include the links to this build in the description, and just go show him some love, go show him some support, tell them just how incredible it is that he's even attempting a project like this, and who knows, maybe he'll get re-inspired and eventually finish this thing someday. That's gonna finish up the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed checking out these MOCs as much as I enjoyed getting to show them off to you. As always, go and support the builders. They certainly deserve it. The links are in the description, so go show them some love, give them a like, a comment, or even a follow. And also, if you like what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button. I'll be back again very soon.